Welcome to the Superdome for today's game between the Saints and the Cleveland Browns. We're going to see if Darren Rizky can keep it rolling, get his second win as coach of the Saints. Jameis Winston's back in town. This is the NewOrleans.Football pregame show presented by Matt Bowers. If you're looking for a new car, good place to start would be checking out his state-of-the-art dealership up on Vets, the Ford dealership. They got everything you need up there. Beautiful facility, beautiful cars, great salesmen, great prices, best everything. So make sure you go check out Matt up there. And I'm the guy in New Mike Triplett. Week two of Rizzy Ball. Yeah,
Game 2.
What are you expecting to see in Game 2 of Week 2 of Rizzy Ball?
I don't know. This is such a weird matchup. I mean, the Browns not too long ago were a fearsome opponent. I think when we looked at this schedule, as easy as we said the schedule was for the Saints, I think we looked at this as though it was going to be a tough matchup for them. But the Browns come in here. They're having a lousy season 2. I think they're 32nd in the league in offense. Nick Chubb's getting healthier. They're coming off a bye. They replaced Deshaun Watson with Jameis Winston, who's had one really good week, one really bad week. I just have no idea what I'm going to expect from either team in this matchup, but I'd like to see the Saints continue some of the gains last week so they feel like they were real. But the Saints are still a flawed team that has Marquez Valdes-Scantling and Mason Tipton as their top 2 receivers.
Yeah, I think it's a tough game for them today. Got Eric McCoy on the screen there. He's going to be starting today, so that's a big help. Browns are flawed, but I think some of the Browns' strengths set up well for them today. Their front seven's really good. Their defensive line's really good. They got good linebackers. I think that sets them up to be maybe okay at getting some stops when Alvin Kamara is carrying the ball. There he is right there. His volume has been crazy. 24% of the target share last week, 28% the week before. That's like wide receiver 1 numbers. If they're going to win today, it's going to be because he's carrying them. And if you haven't seen our story on NewOrleans.Football about him, just some insight onto how he thinks. He took us into his house this week, spent some time with him, saw how he prepares for the game. Was open and candid. Make sure you check that out on our website.
And he's loose. We know he's loose. Yeah. We know he spent 16 hours releasing his body with his physical trainer. And pretty amazing to see. It's so funny because he's such a nonchalant vibe guy. It's awesome to see how hard he works at this, and that's why he's still killing it in year 8.
But I think the Browns, I like the matchup for them on defense at least. The Saints are going to have to ride that high that they had last week. I am really concerned about how they're going to be able to move the ball through the air. For me, it's time to give up on Mason Tipton. I don't think I'd roll him out there as number 2 today. I'd probably have Kevin Austin Jr. out there today. I might even make Tipton inactive. Like he hasn't been producing, and it's time to move on. It's time to move on and do something else there. You got Valdes-Scantling. He'll make some plays, but if you take him away, you have to have somebody else out there that can step up. Because in the second half last week, they took away Valdes-Scantling, and they didn't have anyone else that could really step up. Tipton, I think he has a bright future. I think there's stuff he can do. I just don't think he's ready for the role that they need him in right now, and I'd move on to someone else that made some plays last week. So I would look more at Kevin Austin, even Dante Pettis.
Yeah.
I would just – it's time to give up on that.
That's it, though. They didn't elevate Equanimeous St. Brown, and they released Jermaine Jackson. So Mason Tibbs is one of the 4 today, and it's disheartening. Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna see. I don't know if I'd lean on him today. I would move on from that in some capacity. So, yeah, we'll see. I mean, look, I would maybe.
It's got to be that guy, Taysom Hill, on the screen. It's got to be Taysom and Alvin on the ground game. It's got to be tight ends in the passing game too.
For me, this would be a huge 12 personnel day. I would have every single available offensive lineman that could contribute up, go to jumbo packages. You're going to have to help on Myles Garrett. If you got to manipulate your numbers in some way that you have less receivers up and more tight ends, more offensive linemen, because I think you got to chip him almost every single play. I would be surprised if we see many 3-receiver sets today, maybe third downs, third and long at most. But even then, that's when you're going to want help on Garrett. So it's going to be interesting to see how they kind of go about it. I think it's a tight end heavy day. I would hit those unders on the wide receivers that aren't Valdes-Scantling. And, I think it's going to really be on the tight ends and Alvin Kamara to carry him today. Taysom, he's somebody that I think needs to have more of a role than he had last week. And, I think Alontae Taylor's a person of interest today, too, just in the sense that he's going to have to really step up and take away Judy. And if you take away Judy, maybe it becomes a little bit easier. What are you expecting to see from Jameis today in his comeback to the Superdome?
Well, what's interesting? You said Judy. talk about a huge disappointment for a former first-round pick. Didn't do it in Denver, isn't doing it in Cleveland. But the guy who's emerged as their number one receiver since they traded Amari Cooper, Cedric Tillman, don't know a lot about him except for he was Alante's college teammate at Tennessee. So that could be a matchup we see, some Tennessee on Tennessee with Cedric Tillman. But, I'm sorry to talk about that matchup. The other one I'm most curious about is if this run defense can stop Nick Chubb. Pete Werner, as you reported, is expected to play today. But this run defense has been such a huge disappointment for the Saints all year. Their tackling problems that crept up in the middle of that 7-game losing streak. Last week, they brought more fire, more energy, obviously made the stops when they mattered most at the end of the game, but still let both Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier get some against them. I think this is a game where both teams are going to want to run the ball, and whichever team gets prevented from doing that is going to be in trouble. I'm really curious if the Saints can stop Cleveland's run game because they do have a good interior offensive line, and they do have a running back who should be a little rejuvenated this week.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to kind of see how they attack through the air. Judy does have 150 yards over the last 2 weeks, so he's gotten going a little bit with Jameis. So that is going to be it's a good matchup either side. Both those cornerbacks, I think, is a good test for them. And I think the longevity of the team is something that we're going to find out about a little bit at that position over these next 7 weeks. Kool-Aid really has a lot to prove. I think Alante Taylor has a lot to prove. Alante's next contract, the value of it goes way up if he shows that he can really play on the outside. We know he has the physical attributes, but last week was kind of the first game back out there after spending the last 2 years basically focused on the slot, spending the offseason focused on the slot. So he's going to be out there. And then I think Kool-Aid McKinstry has a lot to prove. I mean, we don't know a lot about him yet. We've seen some downs in some of these games where he's been put out there. But, like, really just out in that position, being able to show what he can do, I think it's really important. And I think a lot about their draft strategy gets decided over these next 7 weeks, because if you can scratch off cornerback, one of those high-level positions is taken off the board. And if you can't, now it's back on the board. Now you're talking about an offensive tackle, a defensive end, possibly a wide receiver, possibly a cornerback. You have all five, possibly a quarterback. You have, like, every single high-value position needed potentially in the first round. If you can scratch cornerback off that list, it would be a huge benefit, especially after they just put a second-round pick into it. Mm-hmm. What's kind of your biggest area of concern outside of just, like, moving the ball today for the Saints overall?
Yeah, like I said, it's the defense. I mean, I don't know if biggest area of concern in this matchup. I gained a little confidence in the defense last year, but if they show us that last week was fraudulent, I think that takes away a lot of hope for the rest of the season. This defense needs to be the strength. I mean, last week they put their, like, heart and soul into it. Tyrann Mathieu had a big speech to the team in the middle of the week. Demario Davis pulled everyone aside between the third and fourth quarter and gave them a big speech. They all talked about how, like, their pride is in this. This is they want to carry the team. They want to come up big in big moments. And if we find out they're just not that good, I think it'll take a lot of wind out of the sails for the final 2 months of the season.
Someone asked, what do you guys expect the offense to look like today now that Eric McCoy is back? What will look different? I don't know that it's going to look different. I just think it's going to be probably executed a little bit better. I don't think that you're suddenly doing all kinds of different things. Like, at the end of the day, your center's in the middle of your offensive line, and you're running your pass plays, you're running your run plays. But I just think you're getting more from it. I think that's someone that can get into the second level a little bit more, lead the way down the field some, help with some of your protections and all that stuff. It maybe takes a little bit of responsibility off a Carr's plate, or at least allows for a little bit more shared responsibility. So I just think things will probably be organized a little bit better, communicated a little bit better, executed a little bit better. But I don't think we're going to look down on the field and be like, oh, wow, like they're doing this different.
It's week 2 again.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're running your plays the way you're running them. You know, like at a position like wide receiver or cornerback, or even like running, like there's different stuff that you might do. Oh, they're playing a different coverage. But at the end of the day, you have to run your protections, and you got to do the things to kind of counter some of the stuff the defense is doing. So I don't think we're going to see anything super duper different. But yeah, I mean, maybe you don't have to maybe there's a little more help going somewhere, or you aren't helping the center. But I just think in general, it's probably going to look pretty similar to how it's looked. But I mean, I'm shocked in some senses how much he seemed to matter when he went out. On the other hand, I'm not, because I think he's a really, really good player. But the value of him has never been more apparent than it is now, and by far one of the most valuable players on this team, unquestionably.
He said, Clint Kubiak said, I think Darren Rizzi said all, that they expect a little rust in his first game back. He's been out since the first quarter of week 3, so he's probably not going to come out right away and look like he's in Pro Bowl form. But what I think should be different, or that I expect to be different, I think just the makeup of this offense right now with him coming back and with all the issues we've talked about at wide receiver, I think Clint Kubiak and company will more stubbornly stick to the run. Like, they've got to make the run game work. They've got to be in third and short situations. They've got to be able to run play action. Like even if it's not working for a while, I expect a stubborn sticking to the run game. I mean, we already know that that's Clint Kubiak's mindset in the first place, but now he's got his offensive line to run it behind.
Yeah, and look, even if there is a little bit of rust, I'd rather have a Schwinn that needs some WD-40 instead of a Huffy. You know, like I'd rather bring the Schwinn out. Yeah, I mean, that's a high-quality bike.
I didn't know Schwinn was – I thought Schwinn was kind of like all makes him up. I thought Schwinn was more of like, Toyota or something like that.
I mean, Schwinn's, it's a high-quality bike. Like, I don't know what people are buying in 24. I know what they were buying back in the day. Like, Schwinn's made, they made good bikes, good Land Cruisers. They kind of had everything. But, I mean, they were kind of the OG high-quality bike brand. Like, you had people out there on Mongooses and Schwinns and, what were they?
GT?
Dynamo. Man, I can't remember.
No, Dynamo's cheap. Dynamo's cheap. You can get a cheap Dynamo.
No, it was like that was a model of a BMX bike. I can't remember the name of the brand that made it. But anyways, look, him being out there a little rusty. Like we saw Carr look a little bit rusty in his first game too. Like that's to be expected a little bit.
I'm loving our background right now. We've got two people in Browns Jameis Winston jerseys. You think custom made, or you think they're in stores after his AFC Player of the Week?
Oh, guaranteed. They're like Jameis has become like one of the more popular players in the.
So you think even when he was a backup, they were printing those out and selling them in Cleveland?
No doubt about it. I mean, I would bet that was like a popular jersey too, just because people hated Deshaun.
Hated the starter. What do you think? I mean, Ken, we did an over/under in our weekly Rouses segment earlier this week, where we set it at 1.5, and if I remember right, I think we both went under, just because Saints only have 2 interceptions in the last 4 weeks. That's what made Tyron so huge last week. They had gone 15 quarters with only 1 interception before Tyron made that huge pick in the fourth quarter last week. But Saints pass rush came to life a little bit last week. Has been disappointing all year. Saints interceptions have kind of faded. They don't have Marshawn. They don't have Adebo. Who can the Saints take advantage of the fact that they're facing a quarterback who might give it up?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure. I think there's definitely going to be opportunity there to take the ball away. And I'd be surprised if they don't get one today. I think they'll get one today. It's just, will they get 2? I mean, I think you probably need to get 2 to win this game. So you got Mike Vrabel out there talking to Alvin Kamara before the game. Yeah. That's somebody that I know a lot of people here would love to see. I just don't know if this situation would be very appealing to them. I think it's a little bit of time. It'll take a little while to kind of rebuild it. Don't necessarily have the long-term quarterback in place. I think he's probably going to have his pick of jobs. And, now that these, like, culture builders, Dan Campbell, like, I think he's going to be in high demand this offseason. Yep. So I don't think the Saints will be at the top of his list. But we'll see. But, yeah, I think they'll have the opportunity to take the ball away from Jameis. Can they do it twice? I think you're going to probably need to win this game. And it's kind of been funny to see the line move throughout the week. I mean, it seems like people really like Cleveland in this game. So we're going to see how that looks today. I mean, but yeah, I think you got to take the ball away a couple times to have a chance to win. Another question from Beanland. What changes do we see with Joe Woods at D coordinator, more blitz packages? I've talked about this a few times. It's just mostly Ben. They aren't using simulated pressures, and they are like 7th in the league in simulated pressure percentage right now. Going into last week, it was probably even higher. They didn't use any in that game that I saw, at least. So I think it's just going to probably be more of that 4-man pressure or 4-man fronts going at him a little bit, kind of getting those one-on-ones for the defensive linemen, not being too fancy with it, just kind of rushing the passer. I think you'll try to do some stuff against Jameis to kind of get him a little bit confused at times. So maybe you see a little bit of it, but I don't think that's going to be the primary objective of the defense today, and it wasn't last week. So I think we'll see some of that. And, Tyron had some freedom to jump off a route last week, or jump off the post last week and jump a route. So I think there's just going to be a little bit more of that. It just seems like there's a little bit more freedom with what they're doing, a little bit more of, hey, players, what do you like? Let's lean into that. Okay, like, I don't think the players are running the show. I'm not suggesting that, but I think there's just a little bit more freedom to do some of the stuff. Another question here from RGene061. If the Saints draft Will Campbell and Penning continues to get better, should the Saints consider moving Fuaga to left guard, since many analysts had him projected as a top guard prospect if he switched positions? Plus, it looks like Fuaga has the mental capabilities to not get stunted by it.
I would be pretty surprised by that, because I think they internally think they have something special in Fuaga, and left guard just isn't as high of a priority position. I would imagine. I mean, Fuaga at right tackle is probably his number one position, and I still think, if they drafted like a Will Campbell and put him at left tackle, Fuaga at right tackle, Trevor Penning, maybe guard, maybe jumbo offensive lineman, maybe the guy who starts 8 games a year as a replacement at both tackle spots because you need that kind of thing. I'd be pretty surprised if we reached a level where they're moving Fuaga to guard.
If they drafted Will Campbell, it would be with the idea of replacing Trevor Penning. It wouldn't be with the idea of, let's keep him on the field and move Fuaga. I don't think you take that position that high if you feel like you need to move one of your current players. I'm sorry, I don't think you take someone that high if you feel like it's to move Fuaga. Now, could you draft Will Campbell and Trevor Penning has the greatest offseason of all time, and now all of a sudden the best way to get the best 3 on the field is you play him at guard, and now this guy that you drafted really high last year becomes like the best guard in the league? Sure, that's not a terrible outcome, but I'm just going to say it again. I think Trevor Penning has become criminally overhyped, and I think people are setting themselves up for a disappointment. He had a good game, but I don't see it in pass protection to where you're like, wow, he's really got this figured out. He's a good run blocker. He's still figuring out in pass protection. He's getting better, but I wouldn't say he's ascended. I would just say he's improving. He's learning. He's getting better. He's become serviceable, but there's a room to get a lot better for a serviceable player. So, yeah, I think that narrative's kind of gotten a little bit out of control. The 93 PFF grade I thought was a little bit high, a lot high. If they put, I don't think he's really going to see a lot of Myles Garrett today if the Browns play how they normally have. But if he does, it could be another game where it's a long day. But look, if you have Myles Garrett on him, you're sending help, and if you're sending a ton of help, I don't know. It just kind of says something about the player, about where he's at 3 years into it. Helping out Fuaga a little bit makes a little bit more sense. It's a rookie in his first year at a new position. You see him, I think he has room to get better too, though. I don't think he's arrived either. I think his pass protection is spotty. But going back to Penning, you go back to the Broncos game, he allowed 8 pressures in that game. That's very recent. It's not a long time ago.
I didn't think he was very good in Carolina either. Yeah.
Yeah, so
just 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, there's room for improvement. I think that one's kind of flown the coop a little bit, and it just kind of needs to come back a little bit. Someone said Carr needs to get rid of the ball quickly because of Myles Garrett. I definitely agree with that. I think it's going to be incumbent upon Carr to protect himself a little bit, but they'll probably have a good plan. We've seen it in. That was week 2, Dallas. They had a good plan against Parsons in that game. I bet they're going to have a good plan against Myles Garrett today. To this offensive staff's credit, they haven't really let one of these you're coming in, you're identifying the monster. They haven't really gotten beat by a monster that they've seen coming.
And I remember Atlanta week 4 as being one where I was super impressed with the offensive staff, because that was the first game where they were without Eric McCoy, and they were also without maybe Lucas Patrick or Cesar Ruiz in that game too. Yeah, because it was coming out of the week 3 game. They lose McCoy and Ruiz, and we're like, uh-oh, what are they going to do? And I think Carr set the fastest release of any quarterback, or time to throw of any quarterback in multiple years, and they really moved the ball on offense. So they figure out how to keep him out of trouble.
Yeah, this guy's different. We're gonna see what they can do. Definitely one of the better pass rushers in the league. But like you said, that's one thing I don't know. They've earned my trust, I feel like, on that. Those might be words that I'm eating at the end of the game. Yeah, but based on what they've shown us to this point, it's been okay so far. You think the tight ends can step up today? I feel like it's a big day. It's a big day for them. I feel like they have to.
Look, I've seen some things in moments where I thought Juwan Johnson was coming around this year, and I've definitely seen some things in moments where Foster Moreau's been an asset for this team this year. So I've actually been a little surprised that they've regressed back to I think Foster had 0 catches on 2 targets last week. I feel like Juwan Johnson has had a couple of his best catches taken back because of penalty, so there's some glimpses there. But I am pretty surprised those guys aren't catching a combined 6, 7, 8, 9 passes a game with the current makeup of this offense. So maybe this is the game where they are.
It would be a good week to finally get Dallin Holker active and on the field, too, if you're just going to have to play like that. They got to figure something out overall to just really get them guys going. Juwan, I think, is somebody that it's incumbent upon him to have a big game. I think Foster Moreau would be another good week for him. I still feel like there's more to give with him, and we've seen some good plays. They just don't really call a lot of stuff for him, but he's delivered when they've called upon him this week.
Two of Moreau's biggest plays of the year were sort of like not improvised, but not first read, like him and Carr figuring something out on the fly when something opened up because the defense paid attention elsewhere. So I almost want to say that happened with his 2 biggest plays of the year.
Valdez-Scantling today, he's somebody that I feel like they're really going to have step up. Really important for him to have a good game today. He only had the 3 catches last week, though. I mean, there were some like robust numbers there last week for those guys, for him, and it felt like, he did a lot more, but it was really all on 3 catches. So somebody else is really, really going to have to step up this week. Is it going to be Dante Pettis? I really liked some of the stuff we saw from Kevin Austin during camp. Obviously, with somebody that didn't fully know the offensive system, there were some moments where it felt like they were getting crossed up a little bit, and him and Derek Carr weren't necessarily always on the same page, him and Spencer Rattler, him and Jake Hainer, whoever he was playing with, and they had to, figure some of that stuff out. But when he had it figured out, you really saw some of those moments, and you saw why there was a little bit of hype about getting him, just, as far as where he came from. And then last week, I thought he made 2 really tough catches. So, again, to me, I think this is a game where you're going to see a lot of tight ends, and I think you're going to see a lot of Kevin Austin Jr., and I think you're going to see a lot of Valdez-Scantling, and they're going to have to try to figure that out and move the ball that way. But it's going to be incumbent upon Valdez-Scantling. If I'm the Browns, I really do consider dropping Ward on MVS and saying beat me with everybody else. Saw it worked for Atlanta last week. I would steal that if I was running their defense.
A name that I admit we completely forgot to talk about when we were talking about the pass-catching plan today, and when I was saying how could they possibly deactivate Mason Tipton, they need 4 receivers. Cedric Wilson is in play today. He did return to practice this week. He's listed as questionable. He's going to be one of the guys we find out on game day. If he's back, that's another veteran set of hands, and I think the last time we saw him healthy, he caught 6 passes. So absolutely, that's another guy who could be a part of the plan today.
Speaking of Cedric Wilson, next time we see him, we got to ask him about the sunlight in Dallas. I totally forgot that he was one of the guys in the playoffs got blinded by the sun. The more and more I read about that, man, that was really. What direction is this stadium point? I have no idea.
This is north. Wait, this is north. East and west, right? Poydras is over here.
So if they ever put glass in it, it would have to be. And
the sun would go this way, and it would set. As the game was getting
so
older,
if they ever put glass, it would have to be. You'd probably want to put it.
Yeah,
north,
that's
north
west,
and south.
right?
Yeah,
that's west. Yeah.
So
maybe.
Yeah. All right. They got a compass app here. I got to know now. I got to know what direction we're looking at. Yeah, this is east. This is west.
No, it's like the 2 end zones are straight east and west. Yeah. Right.
I mean, my compass here says that's south. So I don't know. Maybe Apple screwed that up, but I'm not Christopher Columbus. I don't know my directions inside a building. I hardly know them outside, but yeah, the compass says that's south. But yeah, anyways, we got to ask him about that when we see him next time. What does it mean to you if they win today? Does that change your definition of the season or anything?
It's more if they lose. If they lose, it kind of takes away the last bastion of hope. I mean, if they win today, it'll feel a lot like the win last week. It'll validate the win of last week, and I'll feel like, all right, this is a team that could potentially finish with 7 wins but feel a lot better about itself. And some players could feel a lot better about themselves, and there could be energy renewed. But I don't see a path to like a playoff outcome or a better outcome. I mean, with every possible win, we start talking more about Rizzi as a legitimate head coaching candidate. But if they lose today, all that's out the window. Positive energy stories are out the window. Rizzi as potential head coach is out the window. It becomes a lost season if they lose today, unfortunately, I think.
Yeah. It's funny to me because I almost feel like there's nothing at stake today. Like coming in here before, it was what does it mean for Dennis Allen? Coming in here last week, it was like, let's see the first game of Rizzi. That's cool. And I mean, obviously, there's a lot at stake for this team. I mean, there's a lot at stake for Darren Rizzi. There's a lot at stake for these players. Like they're putting a lot in, and we just watched Alvin get his body treated for like 12 hours. Like players are still doing a lot. Like they're giving a lot to it. So it means a lot to a lot of people, but I still can't shake the feeling that the long-term health of this team is better if they're not winning games. Like I think it's better for the long-term health. Like in some instances.
That was one of the questions that we asked Alvin Kamara. I've asked a bunch of guys in the locker room though. Like I do agree, higher draft pick is better than anything else. But players up and down swear. This is a story I plan to do in the bye week, so this is a little glimpse ahead of it, but that, like, the never bottoming out is good for the culture. Like, always competing, showing you can win, even when, some of your players have been traded away and some of your players are on IR for the rest of the season. Like, that stuff feels good. It helps you come back to work. It helps you put your all into it. It helps you go into next offseason being like, hey, we had a winning record over the second half of last year despite all the turmoil in the first half of last year. There is not zero value to that. The higher draft pick is more valuable than that, but there's not zero value to that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess more what I'm saying, though, is like you still keep going for it, but you lose. Like not trying to lose, not tanking, all that stuff. Like it's just losses are better at this point for the long-term health of the team. I'm sorry to say it, but I really feel like if you get, what's energizing to a team too is if you go draft like Shedeur Sanders, like that's going to be energizing too. People are going to feel people are going to feel like things changed a little bit. Like obviously there's value in winning, and it's easy. Like I say this all the time, it's so easy to stand out here and say it, but just the long-term health of the team, like that's a short-term benefit. I think they had good vibes going into camp this year, and then they lost 7 games in a row. So what does that actually?
Well, but they had good vibes going into camp this year, and they had the hottest start of any team in the NFL. So I think that mattered. It doesn't outweigh everything else, but I think it carries some value.
But that doesn't guarantee you 10 wins.
Doesn't guarantee
you still lose. You can still lose 7 in a row.
Neither is drafting a
player. It doesn't. But I mean, at least you have a tangible asset instead of a feeling, and I think a tangible asset is still better for them.
I agree. It's definitely better if you had a choice.
Going into this game, Jacksonville, number 1 pick right now. New York, number 2. Tennessee, number 3. Cleveland's at 4. Las Vegas is at 5. New England's at 6. New England's the first 3-7 team here. The Saints are 3-7. So there's some draft odds on the line right here. I mean, this is a big game in terms of the draft order. If the Saints win and Cleveland loses, like they're moving themselves 2 games away from somebody. So if you're trying to get that top 5 pick, losing today would be a good thing for this team overall. And, the inactives today, they're going to be Spencer Rattler as the 3rd quarterback. Jamal Williams is inactive today. Millard Bradford is inactive today. Jalen Ford, Lucas Patrick. Mason Tipton is inactive, so they are making that change. And number 97, Christian Boyd, the rookie defensive lineman, 5th-round pick, 6th-round pick. He's inactive.
6th.
He's inactive today too. So moving on from Mason Tipton, I think it's time. I think it's time to do that. He hasn't produced. He's played every game. He has 14 catches for 99 yards. They need someone to step up in that role. And if he's going to play, he needs to produce. And I know they're really high on him. I asked Rizzi about him on Friday. He continued to say they're really high on him. They like the stuff he's done. I know the offensive coaching staff really likes him. Kubiak's been behind him every time. I think he has a good set of skills, a lot of speed. Was a valued UDFA for a reason, but at some point you got to start producing. He's played a lot, and the production hasn't quite been there yet. So you need to get somebody out there that can do it.
Absolutely. I mean, we've talked about it. He leads the team in wide receiver snaps this year, and he only has 99 total yards to show for it. So, but it also, like I said, speaks to Cedric Wilson being a back part of this. MVS and Cedric Wilson, you want to be your number 3 and 4 receivers, but at least 2 veterans in the mix today.
And that means Dallin Holker is active today, so we'll see if he gets any reps, see if he gets any snaps, see if he gets any targets. Another person who had a really good camp, but it hasn't really quite translated to season-long production. That's going to do it for us on today's pregame show presented by Matt Bowers. Make sure you go check out Matt for all your car needs. They got the state-of-the-art dealership up there on Vets, the Ford dealership, but any type of car you want, Matt's basically got a dealership for you. So the takeover by Bowers continues, so check him out at one of his many locations. And stick with us after the game. We'll have all of our analysis, our stories, and then tonight around 7:30, we'll be back live exclusively for NewOrleans.Football members. Make sure you sign up to the site. Check out the Alvin Kamara article up there. We got the live blog going throughout the game. You can talk to us there. You get more interaction and thoughts and insights from us on the site than you will on Twitter or Blue Sky. So make sure you check us out there. That's our primary spot during games. And we'll talk to you later.